Hello, everyone. Back again with your favorite cousins. I'm Candace.
And I'm Colette.
And we are here today to talk about mental health, specifically in the Black community. So it has been my observation that there is a stigma surrounding mental health in the Black community. What do you think?
There definitely is. It's been like that for a long time.
I just want to know why, though.
I think there's a lot of factors. There's just history of how healthcare treats Black people and a lot of the mistreatment there, and just being fearful of going and having to be vulnerable and state what's going on in your life and asking for help. There's also a smaller percentage of Black people that are going into mental health compared to other races. So we naturally feel a little bit more inclined to divulge information when we're looking at someone that looks like us, opposed to going and revealing that information to someone that does not look like us. So when you have less people in that field that you can trust, or you feel that you can trust to say all that information, then you're least likely to go. Resources, location. I think also the church is a factor as well. You look at old school way of thinking, we don't need anybody but Jesus, and that's it. So then no one's going to speak to a therapist. You feel like it's just,
or it's a demon.
Huh?
I said, or it's a demon.
Or it's a demon. Yeah.
I mean, I do feel like mental health, like even outside of the Black community, I mean, because where do most Black people originate from, the islands in Africa, it's like people are seen as crazy, and in in places where monotheistic religions were imposed, mental health and crazy is associated with something that's demonic. So I think a lot of people do feel like mental illness, if they feel like it's demonic, it can be prayed away. It's a lot.
About your job, and okay, if I divulge this information, is that on my record? Is that following me? Am I gonna lose my job because they're labeling me as crazy or whatever, label they want to throw on it? There's a lot of factors.
And I think it's just like we don't acknowledge that mental health is illness, just like physical health is illness. So it's like goes heavily undertreated, because if you had high blood pressure, diabetes, you take that medication. But all of a sudden, if you get diagnosed with any type of mental health illness, it's like, oh no, you're just crazy. Right. And it stops there. Like, why not get treatment for it? I always wondered why it was such a big problem. And and that has impacted my life as well, because I believed it too. I didn't want anybody to think I was crazy, So just a few statistics. So I can't, what year is this from, but it said about 16% of Black people reported having a mental illness or a serious mental illness over the past year. And of course, the rate of mental health illness has risen over the past 10 years. And suicidal plans and attempts are rising. And of course, binge drinking, illicit drug use, smoking, narcotic misuse are more frequent among Black people with mental health illnesses. And I feel like that's directly related to the fact that there's a stigma surrounding mental health illness, and they're less likely to seek care. Right. So it's just kind of like a perpetuation of bad habits and negative things surrounding mental health illnesses. And of course, like you brought up before, there's a mistrust of the healthcare system in general. So I think that's a large part of why people don't seek help. Maybe they think they're going to end up institutionalized, or they have no clue. Because it also goes to, it's impacted by the prison system as well. Black Americans with mental health issues are more likely to be thrown in jail than to be given the option of seeking help or getting help. So there's that. And so there is one interesting statistic that Black people were more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia and less often diagnosed with mood disorders as compared to white people with the same symptoms. And they're also offered therapy and medication at lower rates than the general population. So it's like, instead of calling it what it is, it's kind of like people feed into the stereotype as well. Like, yeah, you're crazy.
Mhm.
Instead of saying, no, maybe you suffer from anxiety, or you suffer from depression. And all these other seasonal affective mood disorders. There's so many mood disorders, but you're also like, we're afraid to be labeled as crazy, and we're more likely to be labeled as crazy, like suffering from a psychosis, when it's just like a mood disorder. And that's very different in how it presents, and very different from how it's perceived, and very different from how it's treated. So I would see why there's hesitation. I know growing up, my parents are from the Caribbean. We grew up in church. Mental health was not discussed at all, to my knowledge. Growing up, outside of church, people think they could pray everything away. And I mean, God can work miracles. However, I do feel like, the Bible does say faith without work is dead. You can have faith in God, but you need to do some work. And I think that's where therapy comes in. And if medications are necessary, that might be necessary as well. But I definitely feel like, I think everybody should go to therapy, honestly.
Absolutely.
That's the work. That's the work part.
Yeah. You got to work that out, because if not, and you take that same trauma, whatever that, you went through as a child, and you still are walking around like that as an adult. And that's how you view yourself. That's how you view others. That's how you let others interact with you. So that needs to be dealt with. That needs to be dealt with for the sake of your relationships with the world. I know, same thing, therapy was taboo in my family as well. When I started going, they kept on, looking at me like, well, what's wrong with you? Why do you need to go to therapy? Do we need to check you in somewhere? What's going on? And it was this big deal. And it's just like, I'm just sick and tired of feeling angry. That's what I felt. I felt crazy. I was walking around angry all the time. And I got to the root of my issues, and I was able to establish healthy boundaries with my parents and with others. And I'm going to keep those boundaries now, because now I know, okay, this is what it is. This is what this is stemming from. And I'm able to check certain things with myself. There's nothing wrong.
I think with maybe not just Black people, but anybody, but just from my observation, it always starts with anger. That's like the trigger to say, oh, you want to talk to somebody, you need help. It's like, it shouldn't go to the point where I have to snap on you for you to realize that I'm not okay.
Right.
So, and anger, it's just a manifestation of pain. So this is not just somebody's angry. There's always like a way deeper reason. Right. And usually it's because they're hurt for some reason or another. So it's just unfortunate that it's just a lot of people are closed-minded, and especially in the church community, therapy is undervalued there as well. I was listening to a podcast, and it said that people with mental health issues manifest that with a religious personality, something to that nature. And I thought that was very interesting, because you do see that people pour themselves into just the ritual of religion as a mask to cover up a deeper issue, which is a mental health disorder, mental health illness, mental health imbalance. So I think that could be a dangerous thing too, because you won't seek out the appropriate help. I started going to therapy in college. One of my professors kind of tricked me into going. I guess she was sick of listening to me and my problems. So she basically bet me to go over there. And the funny thing is, like, it's free. Most universities have free counseling for their students. It was like a whole center where they had like relaxation rooms and all types of stuff, and access to therapists and counseling. And I think you could go like once a week, and it was all free. And I think it was maybe junior year I started going. And I even went while I was taking summer classes. I had an internship and summer classes. I was going to my internship. Sometimes I worked overnight and drove to school, took a nap, and went to therapy after working at 12-hour shifts. That's how committed I was to going to therapy, which is funny because I was ashamed to go to therapy too. Like, I had the same stigma, because that's what, just a product of my environment. I had the same stigma around mental health illness. I didn't want people to think I was crazy. So I walked into that, the first time I walked to that counseling center, I had a hoodie on and sunglasses, looking like I robbed a bank. Like, I didn't want nobody to know it was me. I'm serious, for months in the dead of summer, walking around looking like that. Because I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want anybody to recognize me. And so that's how you know it was a stigma, because it did take me so long to seek out help, accept the help, and be unashamed about it. I talk about therapy all the time. I talk about therapy like I'm talking about dinner. Like it's not a big deal to me anymore. And over the years, I've noticed that around my friends, because nobody talks about it. I've learned so many people are in therapy. Like almost everybody I know goes to therapy now, and I love it. But it's just funny because we're all ashamed of it, so nobody talked about it. And I feel like if we spoke about it more, we probably would have gotten help way sooner than we did. So I didn't tell my family I was in therapy till years after. Like, I went to therapy throughout, like I said, my junior year till I graduated. Nobody knew. And unfortunately, I graduated. And so I didn't have that access to that free therapy. And I went another, say, 5 years without therapy, till I had another, I felt like I was about to have a mental breakdown, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time where I got the card for a therapist, and I texted her, sent her a message the next day and set up an appointment. And I have been seeing that same therapist ever since. So that's going on almost 4 years now. And that's, so it's definitely necessary. But I didn't tell anybody I was going to therapy. It was funny because when I first started going to therapy, she had just started. She was working on the weekends. So on Sundays, so I would leave church early. I would sneak out of church to go to therapy. And he would be like, "Where are you going?" Like nobody knew where I was going. I would just be like, obviously in the middle of service, getting up to disappear. And that's where I was going every week, and nobody knew. I don't think I told my family I was going to therapy till years later. And they gave me the same reaction. They looked at me sideways, like, "What's wrong with you?" But it's funny. We all know what the answer to that question is, but we're not gonna go there. Oh God, there's just so many levels. Jeez Louise.
But it's freeing. I know I feel free.
Absolutely.
I can talk about it now. I've been talking about it. I like the fact that, I go to therapy and I can go in and work on whatever's going on, in Colette's world in my mind, and just leave that there, or learn how to cope with it, So not everything get rid of, but just learn how to cope with it the right way, the healthy way.
Yeah, because some things you can't change your childhood. You can't change the experiences that you had, the traumas that you've experienced. Everybody's gone through something, and just to be walking around with that, in addition to just being Black, like that's a lot. That's a lot. I mean, being Black in America is hard enough, but then you have your own personal demons that you have to deal with, and those go largely unaddressed in the Black, especially I feel like in the Black community, the Black church, the West Indian community, African community. From what I've heard, from friends and, other people I know, it's just a common thread that if you have a mental health and it says something wrong with you, you're crazy. It has nothing to do with maybe something that they themselves caused. It's just like you're automatically crazy. And like it happened out of the blue. Like I just woke up one day angry.
I remember being labeled as an angry child.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was angry, but it's like they never take time to figure out why.
No one ever.
They just stop at that. They just stop at you're just angry and you're disrupting
for her. Right.
You're disrupting the status quo, and nobody likes that.
But we're also trained that way not to seek help. How many times did you hear growing up, what happens here stays here?
And of course, everything gets swept under the rug. They want to look like the ideal family, so they can't have an angry child walking around because that's going to show a crack in the system. They don't want that.
Or you have you can always come and talk to me, and then when you do, you're met with complete anger.
Right, like there's a lack of trust. It's just kind of suffocating because it's a lack of trust within the house, and there's a lack of trust outside the house.
Right.
If you can't trust the people that you're looking at 24/7, how are you gonna trust a stranger?
Exactly.
So what was the statistics about access to healthcare? So there's an issue with there's disparities, like we said, in healthcare in general with concerning Black Americans. They have less access to it, access to insurance and access to healthcare providers. In addition to the stigma of not wanting to seek treatment, if they do desire to seek treatment, it's often not there. So where is it? What I think it was like 2%. Yeah, less than 2% of the American Psychological Association members are Black Americans or Black at all. So yeah, like it's important to, if you're going to seek therapy, it's important to establish a rapport with a provider that you trust. And of course, I mean, I think it's important. I mean, it depends on what the issue is. It really does depend on the issue, but I think it's important to find a practitioner who can relate to you, who looks like you.
It's a necessity. It's an absolute necessity for me.
It's important. It's important to me. When I was in college, my first therapist was a Black woman, and that was by chance, but it worked out well. And my current therapist is a young Black woman as well. And even in that, there's a lot of misunderstanding, because it's not just that I'm Black, it's that I come from a West Indian family. And it's just funny. So it just shows you how important it is to have a provider who can relate, because we've had a lot of discussions that she just doesn't get like you just won't get it. You just you can't understand something that you haven't experienced. So it's funny, like I say this all the time, all foreign people are the same. So you can share stories with your friends who are, children of Arab immigrants, and they'll relate. They'll always relate. So I love my therapist. I think it's very helpful, even though she doesn't understand like a huge chunk of my life, but you can still work out the basics still. So I think definitely representation is important. I appreciate, more and more women. I know a lot of Black women are going into the mental health field, especially as a nurse. A lot of them have become nurse practitioners, and they're going into the mental health field. So shout out to y'all. Kudos to y'all. We appreciate you for doing that, because it is so necessary. And that's we're saying, Black people are less likely to seek therapy, specifically Black men, but Black men are less likely to seek healthcare, period. So we need more Black men definitely more Black men in the area as well.
Because I have a bunch of issues. No, seriously, you guys go through a whole lot.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I can't even fathom how you navigate through this world and not have a healthy outlet for that. So that needs to be normalized.
And then,
all these killings messed me up. So I can only imagine what that has done to you. On top of whatever else you're going through in life or went through during your childhood, that needs to be normalized for sure.
And then going back to the dating conversation that we had, like when you go into a relationship, even in the Derek Jackson video, I said, fix the problems before you try to seek out a relationship. It's like you have two mentally unstable people go into a relationship. That's not going to end well. I mean, we laugh, but it's serious.
Well, life for them, yeah.
So it's like, I know I was super hesitant to seek out, mental health care. I'm supposed to date someone I know good and well he's not. I don't know any guys. I'm trying to think. Do I know any guys who go to therapy? And if they do, they just haven't shared. But I mean, I told all my friends know I go to therapy. I've always been willing to give them my therapist card. Like I beg them to take the card. I be trying to hustle out my therapy cards, like, it's food plates, like come get one. I just really do think that everybody should just at least try it. At least give it a shot. At least try it once. Even if it's just one session, just give it a shot. Because chances are you'll go back.
Right.
Because I mean, when I went to therapy, I was just like, oh, she bet me to go to therapy, I'm gonna go. And I'm gonna walk in her office and say, oh, I went. Now what? I had no intention of going back. But thankfully, my therapist was a really great therapist, and I ended up staying until I graduated. So she did a great job because I had no intention. I was like, I don't need this.
And
I just want to talk.
You learn
Yeah, because I just want to talk to somebody. I don't need to go to therapy, but that's the whole point of therapy.
is an actual issue. There's a lot of things that we're just used to in the Caribbean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Normal behavior, but we're used to it, so we accept it.
And we hear that a lot. I hear that a lot in conversations when I talk to people, and they're like, that's just the way it is. I'm like, okay, that's not enough. Like, right. Yeah, that's just the way it is. That doesn't make it okay.
Right.
And it's funny because that's just always where it stops. That's just how it is. That's just how we were raised, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like that whole how you were raised thing is very deep because it's hard. It's very difficult to unlearn that. I think every young person in their life should take a pause and question everything and unlearn everything and start from scratch.
And what type of stuff do you want to take from your childhood? If you eventually end up having kids, what type of stuff do you want to take from there and continue with in terms of parenting versus what things do you want to leave behind?
Yeah, because you don't want to keep passing down the same patterns because that's what happened. Our parents passed down the same thing that their parents did and so forth and so on and so forth. But everything doesn't work.
I'm not going to be that kind of parent. But guess what? If you haven't done anything to break that, you will.
Yeah, you are. Exactly. That's exactly what you're going to be. And like I said, multiple conversations that we've had, it's like passing down old traditions in the modern world. It doesn't always work. And especially, as the children of immigrants, they're passing down thing. It's like, I was telling this to somebody, I was like, I grew up in Brooklyn, but I feel like I kind of grew up in the West Indies. Because like everyone you're surrounded by is Caribbean people. And they all have the same mindset. They all have the same values. I mean, everywhere. It's like they took the Caribbean and brought it to Brooklyn, and that's where we grew up. So it's like you're living in a different world. It's a world within a world. And not everything that, they needed to do over there needed to happen it didn't need to come here. Right. Everything is not applicable. And the same thing with your children. If you have multiple children, what you do with one child, you don't do with the next, and you don't do with the next.
Everyone has a different personality. Yeah.
And that's another thing I want to talk about later is the implications of the way you're parented. And sometimes we hear, I did the best I can, or that was all I knew. But sometimes I'm like, was it the best you could do? If you didn't try to seek out something better, how would you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, these are the tough questions that need to be asked.
Taking accountability.
There's a complete lack of accountability between generations. Right. And I just, that's a conversation I really want to have about family dynamics, because I feel like most mental health issues stem from family dynamics. Majority of them.
Yeah.
That's the system that first. The system you're surrounded by the most is your family system. So of course that's where most of the issues are going to stem. And I think that's another reason why there's so much shame surrounding it. Because like you said, what happens here stays here. Don't go around telling people all our business. Everybody don't need to know our business. And we take, as young people, we like say, oh, I'm private. It's not private. Privacy, that's a defense mechanism. And it prevents you from holding yourself accountable. It prevents you from digging and finding out what's wrong. You just like, oh, I'm private. I don't need everybody in my business. It's not about having everybody in your business. You can just find one person to be in your business and have that conversation so you can get to figure out, what's going on. It's important to have an unbiased party. Mm-hmm. And even in the church community, a lot of people don't believe in therapy. They believe in religious counseling. I think everybody should go to therapy. You need to have an unbiased party. Because you go see,
There's hurt people in the church.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's a whole.
They have their own traumas as well. So if you're
absolutely
counsel from them only based on their own thoughts and opinions.
There's a lot of toxic mindsets in the church as well. So it's like sometimes you need to go outside that door and seek a different opinion. You can seek counseling from your pastor if that's what you want, but you should always have an outside opinion.
Yep.
I mean, it's necessary.
Yep.
I've heard this a lot in the church. Like, God is my therapist.
God gives us resources. Okay. God gives us
Thank you. Thank you. God gave us resources. We are
mental
spiritual beings in a human body, and
therapists.
human body living a spiritual experience. And you need to seek someone who is human, who can look you in the face and communicate with you in real time.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying. People, like, it's significant in the Black community that you see people with mental health problems, they dig into this religious thing, and that's where they stay, and God will fix it. No, you need to take accountability for your life and take active steps to making a move in a different direction, in a better direction.
And it's
God
not
can, huh?
to go to therapy either, because I don't
Oh,
want
absolutely.
a young
As
thing.
long as you're above ground,
You can be old and still go to therapy because you might have
I
some
think you should go to therapy.
tips because of it. Does not mean I hate to hear the whole I'm old, I'm set in my ways. Absolutely not. You can change your ways. You just choose not to.
Yep. There's just a lack of accountability with certain. I think there's a lack of accountability in every generation. It's just in a different area. However, I have observed more people in our generation who are finding the value in seeking help as far as mental health is concerned. And I'm happy to see that, because we're choosing a different way. And I think we need to. I mean, it's 2021 and we're still operating the same way that people were operating in the 60s. And that is not okay. There are just something, like, you take the good, sift out what you don't need. That's with anything in life. And I think that hasn't happened, especially when it comes to family dynamics. They've just been passing down the same things over and over and over and over and over, and wondering why there's not a different result.
Right.
Like, people love to throw around the term generational curse. I hate that term. Everybody knows me knows I hate that term. Because I just feel like I understand what you mean, but generational curse is not a curse. No one cursed you. It's not a curse. It removes accountability. When you say, people, you have to be very intentional with the words that you use. Saying it's a curse removes accountability from yourself and puts it on someone else or another entity. Mm-hmm. The devil didn't make you do it. You're not demon possessed, chances are. It's just a series of bad decisions and bad actions that were perpetuated and never stopped. So that's what happens when you have generational curses. You have people say, oh, alcoholism runs in my family. It's not genetic. They say, yeah, there may be genetic predispositions to addiction. However, it's just multiple people became addicted to alcohol and it never went checked. Same thing with drugs, the same thing with physical abuse, same thing with mental abuse, same thing with sexual abuse. These are just actions that never went checked. And if your grandma was sexually abusing, your mom was sexually abusing, that's a pattern. And it's a pattern because nobody ever addressed. And I'm really sick of that, seeing that in the Black community and seeing it in the church. And I speak of the Black community and church because those are the communities I'm familiar with. I know it happens in every community, but I feel like it's rampant. And I'm just really mad. I'm just like pissed. Like, it needs to stop. Like, that whole what happens here stays here is nonsense. That needs to stop, because that's why these things get perpetuated. Nobody talks. Mm-hmm. It's like most times when a child is sexually abused by somebody that they know, and nobody reports it, and you force that child to look their abuser in the face for decades at every family get together, and like, come on, and nobody sees a problem with that. That is completely unacceptable. And this is why I think that therapy needs to be promoted and spoken about, and it just needs to be talked about in the Black community, because we have to stop these toxic practices that just get passed down and perpetuated. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, they should know what's going on. I still don't know really anything with our family, but I think I don't. I'm 30. I have no clue about anything that goes on in my family.
Yeah, I wonder that sometimes too. I'm like, what's wrong with y'all? Like, why are you the way that you are?
Right.
I just need an explanation. And also in the way that we were raised, sometimes I'm like, yeah, according to you, you weren't raised this way. So why did you then decide to raise us this way?
Mm-hmm. Or you hated certain things, but yet you're still repeating these behaviors. You hated when your mother did it, but just you're doing it.
Yeah. And some things just don't add up. And that's why I feel like therapy is necessary. Because you have someone who's gonna look you in the eye and check you. Like, I always joke around and say, if you don't curse out your therapist at least once a session, they ain't doing their job. Like, my therapist, she loved to ask questions. And I'm just like, yo, chill. Like, but I keep going back because it's necessary. Especially with me, I'm a person that if I know I can get over on you, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna walk all over you with no problem. So I mean, she challenges me. Like, she calls me out on my stuff because I mean, she figured that out very quickly. And I even told her, I was like, you know what, I came in here and I was about to lie to you, like, straight up. But you know, I was old enough to understand that wasn't going to benefit me. I'm paying this woman. Why am I mean, that's dumb.
Right.
And that's just shows you how indoctrinated we are to believe that seeking out mental health care is wrong. Because I was gonna go in there and lie. Because it's like, this is a stranger and it's none of your business. Because that's what I was taught.
Yeah.
But that's dumb. This is money, this is my hard-earned money I'm paying this woman. I'm gonna go up in her office and lie. That's stupid.
I remember it being also my first time feeling heard. I don't know if you had that type of feeling going to therapy, just feeling seen. Like, there's someone
absolutely
direct eye contact looking at me. There's no cell phone, TV, no distractions. And yeah, even though I'm paying them to do all this,
it's sad that you have to pay somebody to do it.
I can come back next week and I don't see them taking any notes. Okay, I can come back next week and they're spitting back to me what I said to them. So I heard you. I care about what you're saying, and I couldn't even get that in my household.
Yeah, like, you have someone listening to understand and not to respond.
Exactly.
Not to judge you. The very rare occasions that I made the misjudgment to open up to someone, I always regretted it. Because it's like, you feel like you find someone you can trust, whether it's your family or not, and it blows back up in your face. And it's just unfortunate, because I feel like there's kids and teenagers who feel like they have no one to talk to, and then they get judged when they end up doing drugs or something. You have to find an outlet somewhere.
And that's another thing. When you look at the Black community, how many liquor stores do we have there? How many access do we have to all these other unhealthy coping?
Yeah. So it's a trap, and we're trapped anyway. Like, the opportunities to fall into something negative are very close to the door. So you don't want to be the one to push the kid in that direction.
Right.
Because it's not going to take much to find something, negative, get involved in. Yes, people can find positive coping mechanisms, working out and things of that nature. But I write. I've been writing all my life. And even that I never shared with anyone. There's so many people after I published my books, they're like, oh my God, I feel like I learned so much about you. Mm-hmm. Like, I've known you for years and years, and I feel like I just discovered a whole different side of you. So yeah, I had my outlet, but even with that wasn't enough, because that's still keeping it to myself. I'm just writing it in a book, but it stays in that book. Mm-hmm. And doesn't move. It's temporary. It's a temporary transference of emotion, but it didn't help me.
Right. It's like acknowledgement that there's an issue, but I'm not going to do anything about this issue.
And I didn't even acknowledge this was an issue. If you read the poems, you're like, dang. Like, in writing them, I didn't acknowledge any issues. I didn't. I'm like, man, I enjoy writing poetry. I'm pretty good at this. But if you read back the things that you wrote, you're like, there's something wrong. At the moment, I didn't recognize it. I've been writing since middle school. I didn't think anything of it. Mm-hmm. But now that I'm older, and I still, like, I tell people I don't read my books. I don't think I've read either of them cover to cover to this day. But just looking at them, I mean, that's a mirror. Maybe it's a mirror I'm not ready to look into yet. Look, I'm transparent. I keep it real. I'm gonna keep it real with y'all all the time. Maybe I'm not ready to go there yet. But when I read some of them, I'm just like, man. And I think about how old I was when I wrote them. I'm not that old. I mean, it's relative. But I'm pushing 30, but I wrote a lot of those poems when I was a teenager. And I'm just like, sheesh. And it's sad because you go to the church and it's supposed to be a place of healing. And what always hurt me, and we can talk about church hurt another time, but it's like, this is supposed to be a place where you come to heal, and people supposedly have discernment and all these things. And I showed up day in and day out, twice a week, sometimes more, and nobody noticed that I was hurting. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that really frustrated me. And then it's like, you want me to keep going to this place. Make it make sense. And I mean, I've had this conversation with my parents. My dad used to come knock on my door every Sunday, ask me if I was going to go to church that day. Why? Why would I? No, for real. Like, why would I?
And that's sad because, from a religious standpoint, we're supposed to be our brother's keeper, our sister's keeper, and definitely look. But
I sat down and I literally sat down and thought about it. I was like, I show up here every Sunday, and everyone knows they know who I am. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not just a person that sits in the back row. I sit in the same seat every Sunday and every Wednesday. Everybody knows who I am, and nobody noticed that I was hurting. I mean, I went through some of my worst times in my life going to church, and nobody noticed. Mm-hmm. And that really broke me. So, of course, why would I want to keep going to a place like that? No person in their right mind would. Mm-hmm. And that's why I feel like we need to be more transparent about mental health in every area, because people need help. Mm-hmm. And you need to open your eyes and see when somebody is hurting and somebody's in need. No, maybe you can't help them, but you should be able to point them in the right direction. Give them some resources. And if people need resources, like we say on almost every podcast, the internet, you have a smartphone, the internet is there, knowledge is free. You can Google therapy for Black girls, therapy for Black women, therapy for Black men, therapy for whoever you are. It's out there. There are resources out there. And a lot of them are free.
Financial situations and all, they work with you.
Most employers will give you a few free sessions, out of their insurance plan or whatever, or there's therapists and providers attached to whatever insurance plan you have. Use it. Even if you just use the 6 free sessions, it'll get you started. Like, there is no excuse now. People are I'm so grateful that more and more people are speaking up about it and sharing their experience, because that's the only way you heal. For me, that's my vision. That's my that's my motto. Healing through transparency. That's the only way you can heal. Secrets kill. I say it all the time. Secrets kill. And the Bible says as well, know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. You have to be honest with yourself. That may be taken out of context, but I still believe it's true anyway. The truth will set you free.
Yep.
The more and more secrets make you sick, and secrets can kill you. And I mean that very literally.
Hard. Thing to keep carrying with you. You got to keep trying to hide it. Keep putting more energy.
Yeah. It takes way too much effort to keep a secret. I felt so light after. I mean, therapy is not easy, not by any stretch of the imagination.
Because
I mean,
saying it's this person, that person, that person, that person. Your therapist is like, but let's talk about you.
Yeah. And that's exactly, it always comes back to you. In my family, they'll be like, oh, you make it seem like you had the horrible childhood, or you make it seem like I was just the worst, family member or whatever. But in therapy, and this is even for friends and whatever relationship, they think we're just in there bashing you. But in the end, the finger always comes back. Mm-hmm. Just like you said, if you point at somebody, there's 4 fingers. Well, really, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. That's what therapy's like. You pointed fingers at everybody else, and that therapist sitting there looking at you in the face. But what about you? Mm-hmm. So you know what goes on in there. It ain't just a bunch of family bashing and friend bashing, because it always turns into a me bashing,
right? And
a me rebuilding,
right? And
it's about breaking down and rebuilding. You have to break down. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's times where I come out and I felt like a load is lifted. In general, I felt like I just lifted 100 pounds off of myself, but it's hard. It's tough. it is heavy, but it's necessary. It is completely necessary. And I feel like I've grown so much since I started going to therapy. I feel like I'm a completely different person. Cause like that whole privacy thing was my badge of honor. My motto was trust no one. That, and I mean, doesn't that sound toxic as hell? Yeah. I promise you, I used to say that all the time. Trust no one. Trust no one. Trust no one. That was my motto. Trust no one. Who can navigate life not being able to trust no one?
Right. You have friends, but you don't have any of those conversations. Just everything's just on the surface. It's not a good life.
I mean, I said it and I lived by that. I literally did not trust a person like a soul. No one. You ask me questions, it's none of your business. That's my answer. Like, it's none of your business. That's how I used to maneuver through life. Mm-hmm. It is none of your business. This is my stuff and I'm keeping my stuff. Mm-hmm. But little did I know, I was being crushed by my stuff. I was just accumulating this stuff. I'm gonna take this stuff. I'm gonna take this stuff. Ooh, this more stuff. I'm gonna put this in my pocket. That's gonna weigh you down. You can't move. You can't move. Like literally, if you had a backpack and you just kept putting stuff in there, it would be very hard to get around. And that's how people move through life. You're not gonna move forward. You're not gonna grow if you keep walking around with this stuff.
Right, just surviving, but you're not living. You're truly like enjoying life because you're just carrying around all the issues and then blaming everybody for it, getting triggered.
Can we pull up Bag Lady? Because Erykah Badu was preaching a word in that song. I mean, for real, like that. I always knew the lyrics, but as I got older and I used to listen, I'm like, my God, she is preaching. Mm-hmm. Bag Lady, you gonna hurt your back. Mm-hmm. Carrying all them bags like that. Right. Man. And what she said, I bet nobody ever told you, all you must hold on to is you. Mm-hmm. Bag Lady, you gonna miss your bus. You can't hurry up because you got
too much stuff.
Too much stuff. My God. When I heard that after going to therapy, that was life-changing. I was like, this woman is spitting right now. I think everybody needs to go after you listen to this video, put that on. Just put that song on and just listen to it like 5 times. And if that don't drive you to go to therapy, I don't know what will. Cause that was life-changing. And then she's like, let it go. Let it go, let it go, let it go. There are some things that you need to let it go. Yeah. I feel like you need to, you got to bring it up so you can acknowledge it. And then some things, it just got to go. It's not worth walking around with those burdens.
Especially if it's an issue with another individual that one has no clue that you're walking around with this burden, has no clue that you're hurting. Yeah. You have no plans to bring it up to that individual so that you can get to some type of reconciliation if possible. You're out angry and they're living their life. How does that?
Yep. And that's why you go to the family function and it's like everybody's sitting there eating the barbecue, but they all hate each other and don't nobody know. Like you hate that person, they hate you, and you don't know and you don't know. That is toxic.
You all smile in each other's face at the end of the day.
But that's just the way it is. That's right. That's just the way it is. I refuse. I refuse to live my life by that motto. That is not the way it is to me. Like I will question everything. I will question you down, question everything till I'm blue in the face. Mm-hmm. If that's what it takes. If nobody else gonna do it, just know that I'm gonna do it. And I mean, people hate a squeaky wheel, but the squeaky wheel lets you know that there's a problem with the wagon. Mm-hmm. So many people don't appreciate the squeaky wheel. And in my family, if y'all don't appreciate this squeaky wheel, then hate it for you. But she gonna keep squeaking.
I can tell
not just to be squeaky, but I want the wagon fixed. Exactly. That is my desire. and it's funny because they call you the so-called black sheep. It's like they think you're just doing stuff just to do it. Mm-hmm. Really, one, that's insulting because like you think I'm smarter than that. Give me a little more credit. I'm not just trying to irritate people. I want better. I want better for my life. Mm-hmm. And this goes to anyone, family, friends, whoever. If you don't want to be a part of it, that's on you. Mm-hmm. you can excuse yourself, but I'm always going to be on a quest for learning and a quest for growth. And that requires questioning and it requires uncomfortable conversations. And I do believe firmly that every family should sit down and have those uncomfortable conversations because it is necessary.
You'll be surprised what you find out.
Oh, absolutely. When you open that door and all them skeletons come tumbling out,
Mhm.
you gotta unlock those doors. Like, I just don't believe in these toxic family systems. And like you said, that's just the way it is. And I can't get down with that. That's no way to live life. Huh?
That's where boundaries come in play.
Yeah,
Not, I have boundaries with family members. Hey,
absolutely. But why settle for that in your life? Like, why not, especially in church, y'all want to live a prosperous life. That it requires breaking some things down and building some things back up. You can't just want to seek out and pray into existence this prosperous life. Prosperous and wealth, like I said, and I will always say, is more than money. And I think money is the least of it. Being happy and joyful and loving each other. That's the whole purpose of humanity. Every religion has that, the golden rule. Every religion, love, it all boils down to love, loving one another. And it is very hard to love someone when you are broken. I can testify. If nobody else wants to raise their hand, I'll admit it. Like, I am no longer ashamed. I am Candace, and I go to therapy. I am not crazy. I mean, who isn't crazy? What's normal? What's crazy? What does that all mean anyway? It's all nonsense. Everybody has stuff.
we all have baggage.
Everybody has stuff. And I'm never gonna feel guilty for dealing with my stuff. Like, people make fun, and it's just crazy. Like, how you make fun of somebody who's going to therapy? That's self-improvement. Like, what does that say about you that you think is funny or you think is silly that someone's trying to improve themselves? That makes me question you as a person. That you just satisfied to just be static where you are. It's mediocre. It's not a way to live.
Not. It is free. You heard it here first. Candace and Colette both go to therapy, both admit we have issues, and we are dealing with it proactively.
And you should too. We want it for you too. We want the best for you. That's why I'm willing to always put my story on the line. And I feel like that's just human nature. Ego prevents you from moving forward. Right. It's that ego. You gotta break that ego down, because you never know whose life you can change by telling your story. That's a lesson I learned a few years ago, and that's why I had to get rid of that whole privacy thing, that whole trust no one thing. I mean, it was a defense mechanism. It took me some years to figure that out, but it was. And what am I accomplishing by living life that way? Nothing. And what have I accomplished by changing the way that I live and navigate life? So much. I've made so many friends. I've impacted so many people's lives. I've written books and performed all these places because I felt free to do so. You gotta live in your truth. It just feels so much better. And it's not like we're trying to bash our family or bash our friends. It's just, I mean, if you feel like it's a bashing, maybe you need to change the way you're moving. Yeah. I'm just telling the truth. And if the truth hurts you, that means that there's something you need to take accountability for.
Yeah.
Just my opinion.
I agree, cousin. I agree.
Because if somebody said something with my name in it sounded negative, I'm like, ooh, I don't like that. And that's why I always ask people, I'm like, how did I come across? Well, what did I say? Did that sound hurtful? Did that sound, I want to know. I don't want to be, I'm not just going to be like, oh, I don't like you. Don't talk to me because you said something negative. No, I'm gonna have to check that. And that's what evolving looks like. Learning to take accountability for your actions and the things that you say and how you operate and how you treat people. Do with this information what you will, guys. Okay. And we're just shooting a breeze.
Necessary. It is not easy, but it's necessary. I did a whole program with my church and also outside therapy as well. And you get to the part of your therapy where you're like, okay, I need to start making some amends to people. Like I've now got to the place I can acknowledge I've also caused harm. It wasn't just harm that was done to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Hurt people.
Pull those people up that you harmed and go, hey.
Hurt people. I know there was a point in time where I was angry at the world. It's not just the people I was angry at. I was angry at everyone. And it was fun for me. Like I was a rampaging bull. Anyone could get it. Like I wanted you. I was waiting for you to look at me sideways, say something, whisper, breathe in my direction. That's toxic.
It is.
Like I was ready because of course now I know I'm taking my anger with these people out on whoever. I just need to get it out. It don't matter who's in the crossfire. I just need to get it out. So that is not a way to live. That's not anybody that anyone wants to be around. Like it just all requires digging and introspection and learning, unlearning. I think that, so like I said, I always say there needs to come a time in your life where you unlearn everything and start from scratch. It is hard. It is grungy. It is dirty, but it is necessary.
And listen to the people in your circle. If everyone is coming up to you saying you're angry, something's wrong, you're angry,
maybe it might be worth looking into.
That's what
they might be wrong, but it's worth looking into.
We're afraid to be around you. You're afraid to be.
I feel like I'm a highly misunderstood person, so I'm not saying to agree, but it's worth looking into. That's all.
If a lot of people are saying that, there's probably some truth to it. Let's put it that way. One or two, especially if you don't really know them like that or talk to them, okay. But if you're close in a circle is saying that to you, you should probably look into it. It's probably some truth.
It's worth looking into. But yes, we want the best for you. We want the best for the world. If each person does their work, the world will be a much better place. There will be a lot less hurt people. They say hurt people. But if there are no hurt people to hurt another person, yes, this is a fantasy, a utopia, but we can make the world a better place. It will never be perfect because no one is perfect, but I feel like it could always get better. There's always room for improvement. So go find a therapist, y'all. There's a lot of free resources. Even if you got free session from this app, or free session from this app, look, they all add up. If that's what it takes to get started, I ain't mad. I would do the same thing. I'm gonna download every app and get as much free stuff as I can from each one of them.
Right.
I mean, because it can be expensive, and that's what people say, but it's all about what your priorities are. I feel like if people set aside that Starbucks for a week, you would have enough money to pay for a session.
Listen here, 2020, in the beginning of it, I was laid off. I was on unemployment and wasn't making that much money, still had bills to pay. And guess what? Mental health was an issue for me. Best believe I got on BetterHelp. They worked with my finances and I was doing therapy. And I remember telling my parents and they were like, you're not working right now. Why are you spending money on therapy? It's either I spend money on this therapy or they're going to commit me in an institution. Which one do you rather?
Yeah. I mean, it's part of your health. If you don't pay for it on the front end, you won't pay for it on the back end. And trust me, I work in healthcare. It's much more expensive on the back end. I know that aspect. And I just feel like mental health needs to be looked at as important as physical health because it is. Just like you need food and drink, you need something that's going to sustain your mind.
And some of those physical ailments that you have,
absolutely
manifesting because
they all feed each other. The body feeds the mind and the mind feeds the body. I say all the time, the mind is a powerful thing.
It is.
The mind is powerful and you will never know. Like if you free up what's in your mind, your body will feel more free.
Much better.
Absolutely. So think of it. You need to think of it as important as your body. Just like you need to eat every day and you need to drink water every day. You need nutrients. You need to feed your mind as well.
Right. And
you need to unclog your mind as well. It's, what's the needs do a washout? You need a brain washout. Like that's real talk. I think I'm gonna coin that. You need a mind washout.
That's fair. That is fair. I never really thought about it like that.
Mind washout.
Put that on a shirt.
Look, look, it's a lot of people that need a mind washout. You got to do it. I mean, whether it's once a month, you got to start somewhere. You
And
need
this
that mind
never
washout.
I'm cured. You know, it's an ongoing.
It's a process. Life is a process.
Constantly changing in life.
Until you're dead, it just keeps going. It's an ever changing process. So, moral of the story:
Go get help. Don't be ashamed.
there's no shame in the game. It's just a part of life. Just like you get help for your body. If you broke your arm, you wouldn't be sitting there holding your arm for 5 months. Like, it's the same thing with your mind. If your mind is broken, if your heart is broken, you need to get some help for that, because it's not going to fix itself. Right. And even if you think you have these coping mechanisms, and no one could do anything on their own. It's never healthy to live in your own personal world. And that whole I'm private, I'm telling you right now, it's an excuse. You're not, nobody's that private. Mm-hmm. It's just an excuse not to address what you need to address. Mm-hmm. So go on and get that help.
We're not saying not to have any privacy in your life. Some things should be private, okay?
Absolutely. I mean, look, live your best life, but
yeah,
everything.
Those lows.
You should not be a closed book all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my opinion. I am no expert. Just speaking from experience.
Well, you heard it here first. Normalize therapy, especially in the Black community.
Especially in the church.
Counsel. Get an outside source. Continue to work on you, grow, be better, stop hiding. What stays here, what happens here should not just stay here. You got to talk about it. Families, you got to talk about it. You got to talk about what happened to you as a child. You got to tell your children that, and so forth. Normalize that.
Self-love is the best love, and mental health wellness is definitely a part of self-love. You come first. If you ain't right, how you gonna be right for anybody else?
Exactly.
We spend so much time overextending ourselves trying to fix other things and fix other people. We got to fix ourselves first. You can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
So we love you. Peace and love from the cousins. We can't wait to see you next week.
Yes.
We hope you go out and get some help.
Leave us a comment if you like what we did.
Yes, like, comment, subscribe.
Bye, guys.
Bye.